Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for coming. Title of my talk tonight is Samuel Simpson and Valeska Bary, two California pioneers. On the left is a photo of Samuel Simpson, taken sometime in the 1910s, when he was in his 50s. On the right is a photo of Valeska Bary, perhaps taken when she was around the age of 60. The Samuel Simpson photo was taken by a photographer in Los Gatos. I don't know who took the photo of Valeska Bary. This is the obituary for Samuel Simpson that appeared in the Santa Cruz Sentinel on October 3rd, 1948. It gives the basic details of his life, where he lived, the Simpson family, where he came from, where he had lived recently, when the funeral took place. And it also talks about the survivors, and that gives an explanation of how I have come to give this talk. Samuel Simpson's brother was Dr. Kyle Simpson, my maternal grandfather. His niece was Valeska Bary. So this is about family history. It's using records have been passed down to me, some public records, some photographs that I've taken through my own interest in family history on a trip to Ireland. But it's also a story of migration from Europe to America and migration within America. It's a story of agriculture in the state of California. It's a story of the Los Gatos area with special reference to a small town called Wrights near Los Gatos where the Simpsons lived. So it covers quite a few interesting topics. We'll first look at Samuel Simpson's life and then turn to Valeska Bary, and she comes into the picture at the end of his life. Samuel Simpson was the son of William and Hannah Kyle Simpson. This is their farm in County Tyrone, Northern Ireland. Map on the left was about 25.9 acres in size. And on the right is a picture I took on a trip to Ireland in 2002, which shows the land which comprised the farm and the Blackwater River, which runs through that particular valley in Ireland. Here's a house on the left of what the Simpson farmhouse would have looked like. It's no longer there. On the right is a sketch of my great-grandmother's house in County Tyrone. She was one of two sisters, Hannah and Lucinda Kyle. The sketch was drawn by my grandfather, E. Kyle Simpson, when he went on his trip to Ireland in 1904. Here's the family record for William Simpson and Hannah Kyle. They were married in 1858. By 1873, they had 6 children, including Samuel, born in 1860. In August of that year, William came to Canada to seek better opportunities in Canada and more room for his family. 3 more children would be born in Canada. The youngest, Edward Kyle, was born in 1883, is my maternal grandfather. And on the right, I've identified Samuel and Edward Kyle's entry in the family record. Of course, people were left behind. Sometimes people who left would never see these people again. Some of these relatives are buried in a beautiful Irish church cemetery, shown here on the left, and on the right is the gravestone for Thomas Simpson, the half-brother of William Simpson, and Lucinda Simpson, Hannah Kyle's sister. Here's the shipping register for when the rest of the Simpson family arrived. William had come the year before. They arrived in Quebec City on May 26, 1874, on the SS Dominion ship. William Simpson, when he first came, found work as an agent buying and shipping grain out of Morpeth, Ontario town on Lake Erie, about 70 miles east of Detroit. Here's the passenger contract in English and Norwegian that shows one of the early Dominion line ships, such as the SS Dominion. By the 1880s, the Simpson family had a 250 acres farm, 150 acres of which was good land near Morpeth, where they raised livestock and grew crops. Here's a real photo postcard of the farmhouse there, mailed in 1910. Late in his life, my grandfather, E. Kyle Simpson, fondly recalled aspects of his childhood on the family farm, what they produced, sold, and ate there. Now, most of his clothes were altered for him after being handed down from an elder brother. I'm going to read a short paragraph from this one particular letter, which gives you a sense of life on that farm. I think I must have been 10 or 12 years old before we had a can opener in the kitchen. Our food did not come in cans, but we lived well. On standby was a big iron pot or kettle, always on the back of the stove, French style. Every week a soup bone and plenty of meat went into that pot. After it was simmered to tenderness, vegetables were added. Potatoes, carrot, split peas, cabbage, cauliflower, turnips, or whatever was in season and grown on the farm. And was that soup good? You bet it was, and a hungry boy would make a meal of it. Just the last page of that same letter. So anyone interested can look at that letter later once it's been recorded and posted on YouTube. Samuel Simpson had a sense of wanderlust in him. In 1887, at the age of 26, his independent spirit led him to the Santa Clara Valley in California. He settled at the flourishing town of Wright, circled in blue on the right-hand side map here, about 12 miles south of Los Gatos, where he farmed prunes. On the left is a lovely promotional postcard from the Chamber of Commerce in San Jose for Santa Clara County. Really a rich agricultural area. In 1892, Samuel Simpson married Mary Beecher, the daughter of a missionary to Burma. They had two children who sadly had short lives, Ethel, 1893 to 1908, and Sydney, 1895 to 1919. Death notices have come courtesy of my cousin, Laura Lawton, who's done quite a lot of work on family history of the Simpson and Lawton families. Ethel Simpson was mentally disabled, had some heart problems, also contracted tuberculosis. She died in a state institution. Sydney was in the U.S. Army and died suddenly from heart problems in 1919 when he was at Fort Sills. In January of 1945, Samuel Simpson wrote to my grandfather Carl about the painful loss of his children, saying, "Time is the great healer in life." Here are two postcards of growing plums and drying prunes in the Los Gatos foothills. Between 1872 and 1903, the number of dried fruits exported from California rose exponentially from 295 tons to 149,531 tons. And by 1891, Santa Clara County prune shipments reached 27 million pounds, with over 21 million pounds shipped just from San Jose. That's a yearly figure. So some quite lovely postcards of the orchards and the outdoor drying of the prunes. Today, Wright, where the Simpsons lived, it's a ghost town, but existed between 1879 and 1940, serving as an important freight station for farmers who quickly wanted to send their goods to market. Railroad tracks have long been taken away. There's just some ruins of tunnels there, that's all. On the right, it shows farmers loading railroad cars with canned goods, taken in 1893. Samuel Simpson often traveled to Los Gatos, not far away. In the early 20th century, it was a thriving agricultural town. In 1910, it had a population of 2,232 people. Today, it is part of the Silicon Valley digital economy, with the headquarters of Netflix located there. So on the left-hand side, we see a lovely postcard printed in Germany of the business section of Los Gatos. On the right, we see the main street of Los Gatos, both cards about 1907. Masonic Lodge in Los Gatos was important to Samuel Simpson. He was proud to have obtained the 33rd degree in Masonry, the highest ranking awarded for all-around service. Here's an early postcard of the Masonic Lodge, framed in blue, on South Santa Cruz Avenue in Los Gatos. The Masons now have a much more modern facility elsewhere in Los Gatos. Throughout his life, Samuel Simpson maintained contact with his Canadian family. Here's a humorous poem entitled "The Simpson Tribe," about his parents and siblings. He composed it in 1904, not long before his father, William Simpson, passed away in 1909 in his 77th year. On the right, in the verse about himself, he spiritedly wrote, "Please try to remember this long absent lad. He is not very good and yet not very bad." And of my grandfather Kyle, he wrote, "A seventh son too, neither shallow nor vain. Why not make him a doctor? I think it's a shame." And that's what my grandfather Kyle became in 1912. 1922, Samuel Simpson returned to Canada for a family reunion. It was his first time back since he had left in 1887. On the left, we see Samuel Simpson with his two sisters, Mary Jane Lawton on the right and Margaret Simpson on the left. And on the right, we see Samuel with 5 of his 6 younger brothers. My grandfather Carl was then serving as a medical missionary in China. In 1932, Samuel Simpson and Mary Simpson retired to live in San Jose in a house at 2521 Bailey Avenue. It is no longer there. This photo is from June 1935. Notable how Samuel has his chair tilted backwards. He may have suffered a stroke before then. He certainly did at some point. And perhaps he's trying to show he's recovered well from the stroke. Samuel Simpson returned to Canada at least one more time after 1922, perhaps after the death of Mary Simpson in 1943. In this photo, he's pictured in the center with my grandfather Kyle and their oldest sister, Mary Jane Lawton. After a long life, death claimed Samuel Simpson in San Jose on September 30th, 1948, less than 2 months from his 88th birthday. Los Gatos Masonic Lodge number 292, Free and Accepted Masons, officiated at his funeral. The Simpson family gravestone in the Los Gatos Memorial Park in San Jose, which lists the 2 children and the 2 parents, and also Helen R. Beecher from Mary Simpson's family. And this is courtesy of Shav Levine, who kindly went out to the cemetery and took this photo. So now we come to Helen Valeska Bary, the niece by marriage of Samuel Simpson. She's a significant figure in American history. Born in 1888, died in 1973. She was an American suffragist and helped establish the U.S. government's Social Welfare Administration. She campaigned for suffrage at the state and local levels. In 1914, she worked for the California Welfare Commission, investigating the working conditions of women laundry workers, which she wrote about in her report, The Employment of Women and Minors in the Laundry Industry of California in 1917. Shortly after World War I, she worked in Puerto Rico for the Federal Children's Bureau as a researcher and social reformer, reporting on the living conditions of indigent and homeless children on the island. In her 1921 paper, The Trend of Child Welfare Work, published in the North American Review, Bary wrote, "The greatest enemy of childhood has been the fatalistic complacency with which every phase of child life has been regarded." Bary worked for the Federal Social Security Board since its inception in 1935 during the Great Depression. She worked there until 1948, representing the Social Security Board in Western states, helping them to develop social welfare reform plans in order to receive federal money. Shortly before she died in 1973, Bary was one of 12 women interviewed by Jacqueline Parker for her work on the suffragist oral history project for the University of California at Berkeley Oral History Center to document their activities on passage of the 19th Amendment and their continuing careers as leader of movement for welfare and labor reform, world peace, and the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment. So you can find the transcript of the Parker interview online. It's quite long and fascinating, perhaps more fascinating if you're a historian of social welfare reform and the welfare state. She was certainly a busy and very capable woman. So I'd certainly consider Samuel Simpson to be a California pioneer. He went out there, set up a prune farm, helped with the state's tremendous expansion of agriculture production of many different kinds of fruits and vegetables. In terms of Valeska Bary to be a California pioneer, he was a proponent and ambassador for the welfare state, which funds the governmental institutions for healthcare and education, along with direct benefits given to individual citizens. It is a form of government in which the state protects and promotes the economic and social well-being of the citizens, based upon the principles of equal opportunity, equitable distribution of wealth, and public responsibility for citizens unable to avail themselves of the minimal provisions for a good life. She's also a positive feminist role model for American women in the 21st century. Yeah, so this memorandum dated December 17th, 1948, from Valeska, Bary, executor and beneficiary of the estate of Samuel Simpson, to his relatives in Canada, is a revealing and lucid case study in retirement planning and living. Also gives us a comprehensive view of the life of Samuel Simpson. In this memorandum, she meticulously sets out how, in their private life, she and her brother, Dimitri Bary, provided financial and other assistance to Samuel and Mary Simpson to help them overcome their difficulties in retirement. Such help is how Americans, before the introduction of the federal Social Security program in 1935, survived if they did not have financial resources to draw upon. I'm going to read almost all this letter. I ask you to bear with me. It's a really fascinating letter and gives us a remarkable picture of Samuel Simpson and Mary Simpson too in their retirement, as well as Samuel Simpson's general motives and vision in his own life. I am sure that you would like to know Uncle Sam's reasons for leaving his property as he did. And for my part, I wish to make this explanation. Uncle Sam came to California over 60 years ago, and a few years later married Aunt Mary, who then lived with her mother and two sisters, Lizzie and Florence Beecher, near the ranch on which Uncle Sam was employed. By this marriage, he became a member of that family group. They lived as neighbors in the mountains for 40 years, and then they all moved down to San Jose, where they continued as close and intimate neighbors. During the Depression, Aunt Lizzie and Aunt Florence lost most of their resources. They were then over 70 and unable to support themselves. Uncle Sam and Aunt Mary were deeply distressed, but they felt rightly that they could not jeopardize their own future by sharing their own resources. Uncle Sam had had a stroke which incapacitated him for quite a while, but from which he eventually made an excellent recovery. For a number of years, however, he and Aunt Mary lived in active dread of a recurrence which might involve heavy expenses, more than exhausting the property which they had saved up. Uncle Sam was most anxious not to leave Aunt Mary destitute. Uncle Sam and Aunt Mary asked my brother and myself to help them with their problems. We had not had close contacts previously with the Simpsons and the Beechers, as we had never lived near them, and for a number of years we had been in the East. As a result of our discussions, we agreed to support the Beechers as long as they lived, and we also agreed to take care of Uncle Sam and Aunt Mary if their resources became exhausted. Aunt Lizzie lived until 1940 and Aunt Florence until 1942. For several years, they managed to do their own work, and then for a couple of years, they had to have the services of a housekeeper, and the last years we maintained them in nursing homes. Our expenditures for Aunt Lizzie and Aunt Florence over the years came to a very considerable amount, and they and the Simpsons were very appreciated for the comforts which we provided. The drain on our resources was such that we were unable to save a cent for our own old age. After Aunt Florence died, Aunt Mary told me that she wished to reimburse us, at least in part, for what we had expended for her sisters, so she had an understanding with Uncle Sam that if she died first, he would take her half of the community property to use during his lifetime and leave it to me on his death. On her death in 1943, the community property passed to Uncle Sam. On another score, Uncle Sam felt under obligations to my brother and myself. When he sold his ranch, Uncle Sam received a down payment of only 1/4 of the purchase price. The purchaser was a careless and ignorant farmer whose object was to take off the crops and do nothing to keep up proper cultivation. He had an irresponsible son who killed 2 persons in an automobile accident, and very heavy damages were awarded. As a result, the purchaser made no further payments and allowed the ranch to go to ruin. Finally, Uncle Sam recovered possession of the property, but on account of his stroke, it was impossible for him even to ride up into the mountains. Naturally, he was very worried about the property and his health was seriously affected. So, to relieve his anxieties, I bought the ranch at his price and paid him in cash, which I had to borrow. I knew nothing about fruit growing and was very dubious about the undertaking, but it was imperative to relieve his worries and impossible to find another purchaser. Uncle Sam made an arrangement with a young couple, Mr. and Mrs. Everett Burdett, the daughter and son-in-law of an old friend in the mountains, to take over the ranch. The soil was badly eroded, and many of the trees had died, so under the lease, the Burdetts were to pay nothing for 5 years. I paid for new trees, taxes, fertilizer, new water tanks, general repairs, and in addition for farm labor to assist in the first heavy work. When we found out how badly the soil was depleted, I paid the Burdetts $25 a month to induce them to remain. The man who had purchased the ranch from Uncle Sam continued to make trouble, so I also had the annoyance and expense of an additional lawsuit. After the 5 years, the ranch began to pay modest returns, and the Burdetts wished to own it. They had put in 5 years of hard work for a bare subsistence, so we all thought that they were entitled to have the ranch at a price below the market value. It gave Uncle Sam great satisfaction to know that the ranch was being restored and that his young friends would be carrying on where he and Aunt Mary had lived so happily for so many years. This transaction cost me several $1,000s in addition to a great deal of time and trouble. At the time of sale, Uncle Sam offered to repay what I had lost, but this I refused, so as I wished him to have the free use of his capital, he then said he would repay me in his will. There was a third point about the will which he mentioned to me and to others a number of times, and that was the fact he considered that he had rendered service to his family in his early manhood, which completely cleared him of further family obligations. He was about 13 when the family moved from Ireland to Canada. Uncle Sam was well grown and strong, and his father needed his services on the farm. So he worked hard to get the family established and received very little more schooling, a sacrifice which he felt keenly all his life. When he was quite young, he heard tales about California and determined to come here, but first he wished to perform his duty to the family, so he remained in Canada and worked for 12 years. When he left, he took only a little money which he had earned by working for neighbors. In California, he and Aunt Mary worked and saved for 14 years before they accumulated enough money to buy his first piece of land. He felt strongly that what he had accumulated was due entirely to his own efforts and those of Aunt Mary. Signed, Valeska, Bary. Conclusion. The lives of Samuel Simpson and Valeska Bary gives a picture of two pioneering lives in their own fields in the state of California. Each of them was a sociable, caring, and hardworking person. Each represents different eras and different personal histories shaped by immigration and economic growth and changes in daily life in California, Europe, and North America. The story of the retirement planning and living struggles of Samuel Simpson and Mary Simpson and the role Valeska Bary played in the creation of the welfare state in the United States is relevant at a time when the Social Security program is a central political issue in the United States. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. You did a great job. Thank you. I'm sure that there's questions that folks have. So please, if you would unmute yourselves and go ahead and ask your questions to Kyle.
Well, I have one.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Don.
I noticed in the Los Gatos picture there was the streetcar track going down the middle of the main street. I guess that was the day when you could ride a streetcar from Los Gatos all the way to San Francisco.
Wow.
They went through Saratoga and right on up to Palo Alto. So
I was curious also about that picture, Don, because I've never heard of Wrights.
no,
The town of Wrights, and I was curious to find out if Kyle do you know where that town, it had to be close to Los Gatos, I guess, right?
I think it's maybe about I've forgotten the exact number. It's something between like 5 and 10 miles south of Los Gatos. It's not very far away.
Okay, well, that's going to give me something to look up because I'd never heard of that town before. So that was very interesting to me. Thank you for that.
Is that the one that's buried by the Lexington Reservoir now, or is I'm thinking of a different one?
I don't think so. There's a lot of wine growing in the winery cultivation in that area now.
I also had a similar question. Have you tried to locate the former ranch? Is it still there? Do you know?
I don't expect it's there. I think it's probably been taken over for grape production for winery. If I was living in California, I might have gone to the local registry office and tried to figure that out. But I just know the ranch was in the general rights area.
Thank you.
Well, I know the town that's under Lexington Reservoir is Alma.
Oh, okay. I knew it was one of those small
And
ones.
there was
I
an
couldn't
even
remember.
smaller area called Lexington, which is why we got Lexington Hills, that was between Alma and Los Gatos. And Wrights is sort of like up around the Summit Road area. Wrights and Laurel. They were both train stations. They're tunnels.
In the mountains.
That's another reason why they're well known, because there are tunnels for the railroad that used to take you from Los Gatos to Santa Cruz.
Yeah, the particular tunnel at Wrights was heavily damaged by the 1906 earthquake. It was also the scene of an accident which killed a lot of Chinese railway workers.
Yeah, they're fenced off. You're not allowed to go in anymore. You used to be able to walk into them, I think, before they decided that for insurance reasons you can't get in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All the years I've lived around San Jose, I've never heard of that town. So you're always learning something new. That's great.
Yeah. Well, once Highway 17 opened up, that was the end of the railroad.
Right.
Yeah, but that railroad had played a key function, in also taking tourists to Santa Cruz from San Francisco, but also, moving the agricultural crops from the farms to the markets, also from the farms to canneries as well, and
lumber, all the redwood trees that were felled in the Santa Cruz Mountains to rebuild San Francisco.
I have a history lesson about postcards. In 1948, when I was a teenager, I went into Los Gatos and I saw a postcard rack in front of the pharmacy with all these pristine, beautiful cards from 1910 and so on. And some of those I put in the newsletter, but that was a treasure trove. The pharmacist said he found the boxes in the basement of his drugstore. And so he put them out there on that rack to sell them. So that was a real treasure trove for me.
Great. You buy them all?
So this is a good example of how postcards provide a topographical background, for presentation, such as mine, which has a family history focus to it.
Right. There's so many stories. I tell you, and even today, as I go through my collection of cards, I read them over and over again. I'm always finding something new in the cards that make them even more interesting. So it's just a wonderful way to study history. You're absolutely right, Kyle.
Anyway, I want to thank Shab for inviting me to give this talk. It's an opportunity to explore family history and bring to light, interesting story of two people, and particularly Valeska Bary. I think my Uncle Sam really lucked out in terms of someone to help him in his old age. Someone who is so incredibly capable and warm and full of poise and compassion. We all need friends like that.
Absolutely, and you lose track of time looking back in history before Social Security came about. I would imagine stories like what happened to your uncle. That happened thousands of times over and over again, and if it wasn't for the goodwill of a lot of people, it would have been very tragic. But fortunately, people were good. Yes, Debbie.
I just have a comment I'm also a member of the Santa Cruz County Genealogical Society, and I hope that Kyle will take this story and write it down to preserve it. It's so important that you preserve some of these stories because they just get lost.
Thank you.
That was my comment. Thanks.
Well, we thank all of you very much for being here tonight.